Hello, my dear ones. Thank you for being here with me tonight. I know the hour you're watching this might already feel quiet, maybe even a little uneasy, and that's exactly why I wanted to speak now. My name doesn't matter anymore, not the one I used back then, but I am a former practicing witch, and for years I worked in places most people only whisper about. I left that life behind for a reason, and tonight I want to tell you something I never thought I would say out loud. If your dog barks at empty corners every night, if it grows at nothing you can see, you are not imagining things, and neither is your dog. Animals were always more honest with me than people. They reacted before words were spoken, before rituals were finished, before something crossed the veil. So take a breath, stay with me, and listen closely, because what I'm about to share may explain moments in your own home that never quite made sense. When I was still practicing, one of the first lessons drilled into me was this: dogs do not see the world the way humans do. They don't rely solely on light, shape, or logic. They perceive pressure, shifts in air, emotional residue, and spiritual movement. I remember countless nights when a ritual hadn't even begun, yet the dogs in the house would already be pacing, whining, or staring into corners where nothing physical existed. We were taught never to ignore that. Empty corners are rarely empty. Corners collect energy the way dust gathers under furniture. They are natural resting points for things that drift, linger, or hide. When your dog fixates on one specific spot night after night, it's because something there hasn't left, even if it no longer has a body. People used to laugh when I warned them, telling me their dog was just bored or protective. But boredom doesn't freeze a dog in place, muscles locked, ears tilted towards silence. Protection doesn't look like trembling while growling at air. I've watched dogs refuse to cross a room because of one corner, dragging their owners back with leashes tight in fear. That kind of reaction only happens when an animal senses an unseen presence that doesn't belong. Spirits, residual energy, watchers. There are many names for them, and not all are malicious, but none should be ignored. At night, when the world quiets and human distractions fade, these presences become louder to those who can sense them. Your dog isn't barking at nothing. It's warning you the only way it knows how. I stopped practicing because I learned something too late. Opening doors is easier than closing them. Many of the things people call harmless are invitations, not visitors. When energy is stirred through grief, anger, trauma, or ritual, it can settle into a home and attach itself to familiar shapes like corners, hallways, and door frames. Dogs notice the change immediately. Their sleep patterns shift, their behavior grows restless, and their focus sharpens toward places humans overlook. I've had dogs sit between me and a corner all night long, refusing to lie down, acting as guardians against something I couldn't undo. So if your dog barks every night at the same empty space, don't scold it. Don't laugh it off. Sit with that moment because your home may be holding onto something you never invited, but something that noticed you anyway. There was a time when I believed dogs barked simply to protect territory, but experience corrected me harshly. Territory means nothing to a spirit. They don't respect walls, ownership, or locks. What they respect is awareness, and dogs are painfully aware. When a dog barks at a corner every night, especially between midnight and dawn, it's reacting to movement that isn't physical. Corners act like mirrors between layers of reality. They're intersections where energy slows down, gathers, and sometimes becomes visible to those not bound by human perception. I've seen dogs track something moving up the wall, their heads tilting higher and higher until their eyes followed it into the ceiling. Humans saw nothing. The dogs saw everything. That barking wasn't noise. It was a boundary being drawn. One night still haunts me more than the rest. I was staying in a house where no rituals had been performed for decades, or so the owner claimed. Their dog, an old shepherd who barely moved anymore, suddenly stood up at exactly 3:11 a.m. every night and barked at the same corner of the living room. Not aggressively, pleadingly. That distinction matters. Aggressive barking is defense. Pleading barking is fear mixed with recognition. When I finally acknowledged the corner, when I stood near it and focused, the temperature dropped so fast my breath fogged the air. The dog whimpered and pressed against my legs. That house didn't have a ghost. It had a memory that refused to fade, replaying itself nightly, and the dog was trapped, witnessing it again and again. Dogs don't just see spirits, they feel intention. This is what most people don't understand. A harmless presence doesn't provoke panic. A lingering watcher does. When your dog barks while backing away, when its tail tucks or its hackles rise, that's not curiosity. That's recognition of something that doesn't wish to be acknowledged. Corners are perfect hiding places because humans rarely stare into them long enough to notice changes. Dogs do. They stare because something there stares back. And when night falls, the veil thins just enough for those presences to press closer, to test whether they are still seen, still remembered, still feared. I used to advise people to cleanse their homes with herbs or prayers, but I learned that cleansing only works when the cause is understood. If your dog is barking nightly, something has already rooted itself. Ignoring it doesn't make it leave, it makes it bolder. Dogs sense patterns before humans do. They notice when footsteps repeat without sound, when shadows stretch in unnatural ways, when energy pulls where it shouldn't. I've watched dogs block doorways, refusing to let children pass because something had followed them home from elsewhere. Animals don't imagine threats, they respond to them. And when the threat appears nightly in the same corner, it means it has claimed that space as its anchor. The hardest truth I learned as a witch is that not all spirits come from death. Some are born from emotion. Extreme grief, rage, or despair can leave behind echoes strong enough to behave like living things. These echoes gravitate to corners because corners don't move. They wait. Dogs can sense emotional residue the way we smell smoke. If your dog barks after arguments, after crying, after restless nights, pay attention. You may be feeding something unintentionally. I've seen homes where nothing supernatural ever happened. Until pain stayed too long, the dog always knew first. It always tried to warn them. And every time, the humans wished they'd listened sooner. Another thing most people don't realize is that dogs don't react the same way every time unless the presence itself is consistent. Random barking is noise. Patterned barking is communication. When a dog wakes at the same hour, moves to the same spot, and fixates on the same corner, it's responding to a scheduled disturbance, something that returns because it never truly left. During my years practicing, we were taught to record animal behavior before any spiritual work because animals notice disturbances in the unseen long before humans feel uneasy. Dogs would growl at empty corners days before doors began opening on their own or objects shifted. By the time humans noticed, the presence was already comfortable. I remember a client who insisted her dog was misbehaving and punished it for barking at the hallway corner every night. Within weeks, the dog stopped barking, but not because the presence was gone. It learned silence out of fear. That's when things escalated. Scratches appeared on the walls near the corner, not deep enough to explain, just enough to be noticed. The air felt heavy. The dog began refusing food. When I visited, the energy in that hallway pressed against my chest like a weight. The dog had been acting as a warning system. Once silenced, the presence no longer needed to hide. Dogs bark to alert, not to annoy. When that alert is ignored, the balance shifts. Corners also serve as crossroads for movement. This is something ancient traditions understood well. Four walls meeting create a pause in energy flow. That pause allows things to linger, observe, and decide. Dogs sense that hesitation. They watch corners because movement there doesn't follow human rules. I've seen dogs track something that appeared to slide rather than walk, stretching and compressing unnaturally. Humans dismiss this as imagination because our brains demand logic. Dogs don't require explanation. They trust instinct. If your dog refuses to take its eyes off a corner, especially when the room is otherwise still, it's because something there doesn't obey physical laws. Nighttime makes everything clearer for animals. Human activity dulls spiritual noise, but silence amplifies it. When lights dim and people sleep, presences feel less observed. Dogs, however, remain alert. Their barking often starts softly, as if asking a question, then grows louder when the presence doesn't retreat. That's when people wake up annoyed, confused, or frightened. I've had dogs stand between their sleeping owners and a corner all night, barking until their voices broke. That isn't aggression, that's guardianship. Your dog may be protecting you from something it doesn't fully understand, but knows doesn't belong. I want you to understand this clearly. Not every presence is evil, but no uninvited presence is harmless. Some are curious, some are lost, some feed on attention, fear, or routine. Dogs react differently depending on what they sense. A playful bark means curiosity. A low growl means warning. A desperate, repetitive bark means danger. During my years as a witch, I learned to trust dogs more than any spell or tool. They were never wrong. When they refused a space, I avoided it. When they barked at a corner, I knew something had already crossed into our world, whether we acknowledged it or not.